And when you hear the word hate around Marcus Rashford, I really just want to slam the brakes on that. I always come back to the things that, remember, there's a human being in there. Your fans are brilliant, certainly in the ground. They're fantastic in terms of the support for Marcus Rashford and for Erik ten Hag, as we saw last season. If he can work with someone like Ruud van Nistelrooy, who knew how to make the runs, still knows how to make the runs, who was a prolific finisher, who also was psychologically strong, and work with Marcus on that, because there's still a good player in Marcus Rashford.
Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and we are here with a very special one-on-one interview. We are joined once again by friend of the channel at this point, I'm going to say it, sports journalist and journalist of the year, Henry Winter. How are you doing, Henry?
Very good, Joe. How's your summer been?
It's been excellent. It's been fun. It actually feels slightly positive, and I don't know if that's Manchester United or, I don't know, just something in the air, but it feels as though there's a little bit of positivity around at the moment. We've got loads to talk about. Obviously, you were involved a lot at the Euros, and I want to talk a bit about what we saw from some of the United players there, or maybe what we didn't see in the likes of, in the case of Marcus Rashford. A little bit about transfers, a bit about Ineos generally, what we've got to see from them so far and what we can expect going forward. But I think one place that would be good to start has been a big talking point for a while now at Manchester United, and someone that we've spoken about before, and I know you've spoken about a lot over the years as well, is Marcus Rashford. And he's someone that it seems once again we're at another of many crossroads in Marcus Rashford's career, where there are a lot of doubters, there are a lot of people who think that his time at the top may be over and he wasn't in the Euro squad. We saw him miss a few big chances at the Community Shield that seems to have sort of reignited a lot of hate and dislike for Marcus Rashford. Just as a general question, first of all, what do you expect from Marcus Rashford going forward? And do you think he can sort of turn this reputation and this sort of difficult patch of form around? Or, you know, do you expect to see big things from him this season?
I mean, it's interesting and slightly sad that you use the word hate, and I understand why you use it. And Marcus Rashford does provoke that or elicit that reaction in some people. But look, Rashford is someone who cares about Manchester United. Everyone knows his backstory. He's at a stage in his career when he needs to be delivering. He didn't deserve to go to the Euros on form. Anthony Gordon, who only got 6 minutes out there, definitely deserved to have that, or one of the many who deserved to have that left-sided attacking position ahead of Marcus Rashford. So I don't think there were any complaints there. In fact, I went to all of Southgate's press conference, and I don't think Marcus's name was raised even once, maybe once. So there was no issue there. You saw in the Community Shield, I mean, Manchester United, actually I thought Amad Diallo did well in the first half, but it's when Garnacho, I mean, you know, so much is resting on your young players. Kobbie Mainoo, who was terrific for England at the Euros, but Garnacho, you know, we've seen what he's done with his country, and what he's done with you, and he set that chance up for Marcus Rashford, who then shinned it. And I mean, I was there, I was watching. Obviously, I felt for him, you know, it's important he was getting in those positions. But you looked at the camera, and I had a monitor in front of me. The camera immediately panned up to where Lee Cardsley, the England interim coach, was sitting. It then panned down to the Manchester United bench to where Ruud van Nistelrooy was sitting, and Van Nistelrooy would obviously have taken that chance. But, you know, maybe those are two important focuses for Marcus Rashford, to think that he can get back in the England squad because the slate is clean. Cardsley will look at everyone, and if they're playing well for Manchester United, then pick them. But Ruud van Nistelrooy, I think, is really important because he knows how to deal with being a striker and with wearing the Manchester United shirt. And you guys are obviously very close to it, but someone like me who sort of bounces around between clubs, you really get to sense the weight of the shirt with Manchester United players. And I think you've got to be stronger to play for Manchester United than for other clubs, because you are the biggest club in the country. You're the second biggest club in the world after Real Madrid. And there is that pressure. And I think Marcus is the type of, I mean, I don't know him that well, but he strikes me as the type of individual who is slightly introverted, who needs a bit of love. He needs good people around him, which I think he's got with his brothers and his mum and people at the club, the coaches at the club. But he does need that constant reassurance. He's had one or two issues away from the field, people close to him who passed away, which certainly knocked him in his foundations. And I think he's just needed someone strong, and to sort of show him some love. And when you hear the word hate around Marcus Rashford, I really want to slam the brakes on that, because how does that help any player? You're almost heading back to the type of abuse and the type of reaction, certainly the intensity of it, that Marcus Rashford received along with Jadon Sancho and Bukayo Saka after England's penalty shootout loss to Italy at Wembley in Euro 2020. So people have to be very careful with the words that they use. I've got friends who are Manchester United fans, and we talk about Marcus Rashford a lot. And I always come back to the things that, remember, there's a human being in there. And if you want the player to perform, and you saw it, you'd have seen it game in, game out 2 seasons ago when Marcus got, 29, 30 goals?
30.
He was absolutely outstanding for you. But 30 goals, okay, fantastic. So that shows that there's a good player in there. So it's a question of actually working with him, showing him the love. Your fans are brilliant, certainly in the ground. They're fantastic in terms of the support for Marcus Rashford and for Erik ten Hag, as we saw last season. But I do think on a technical level, and maybe also as a psychological level, if he can work with someone like Ruud van Nistelrooy, who knew how to make the runs, still knows how to make the runs, who was a prolific finisher, who also was psychologically strong, and work with Marcus on that, because there's still a good player in Marcus Rashford.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that point of how does hating someone or hating on someone or, abusing someone, or even just, that real over-the-top vicious criticism that maybe individually doesn't cross the line, but when you've tweeted or spoken about him 20 times in the last week and it's all been negative, how does that encourage someone or help someone get better? I don't understand that. I think the best way to do that is to address and talk about when there are problems, and don't shy away from it just because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but at the same time encouraging someone to get better and backing someone is the best way, especially as a fan, to do that, I think, personally. I mean, you mentioned the Euros there, and obviously he wasn't at the Euros, and I think for some United fans, you wouldn't have believed that 12 months ago that he could possibly end up not starting, let alone in the squad at the Euros for England. A couple of other players who, for good and for bad, have featured heavily in the Euros. Luke Shaw, who played in the semi-final, played in the final, is now not fit for Manchester United 3 weeks later, or approaching a month later now, wasn't even in the squad for the Community Shield. Let's start with him. I want to talk about Kobbie Mainoo afterwards, but let's start with Luke Shaw, because I think for some United fans, that's rubbed people up the wrong way a little bit. He was fit for England, and then all of a sudden, a month later or 3 weeks later, at the time of the Community Shield, is now not ready to play for Manchester United, despite the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Kobbie Mainoo coming back from training at a similar time, and they were available. What's your understanding of the sort of Luke Shaw Euros situation?
I would be furious if I was Manchester United. I'd be furious if I was Erik ten Hag. I think ten Hag actually said early on in the Euros, be careful with him. And look, I'm sure Manchester United got a good medical staff. They were absolutely liaised with England's medical staff. But I think the history of Luke Shaw is you have to be careful. You can't rush him back. I mean, I was going to all those training sessions and asking the FA official, when the players come out, is Luke Shaw going to be training? And it was no, he's going to be doing sort of load management or in the gym, or he won't be training today. You didn't want to see a player like that rushed back. And it is, remember that, that horrendous injury that he got, that double leg fracture, was it against PSV when he went into the box and he got caught? And it was just, I remember talking to one of the players, and the players were saying they could actually hear his scream on the bench. So 50, 60 yards. So when you go into that and you know that, I'm not saying that his subsequent injury problems are rooted in that. I absolutely have no medical evidence for that. But you have to be careful of a player like Luke Shaw. And I just didn't understand the logic. We talked to Southgate about this. Is that why didn't you bring proper cover for him? We talked to Mark Gay. Was he surprised that Tyreek Mitchell, his Palace teammate, wasn't out there? And the two of them could have had an understanding left-sided centre-half, left back as well. And Kieran Trippier was pushed over there, and which Trippier is hard-working, but it imbalanced the whole team. So this waiting for Luke Shaw, we called it the Shaw flank redemption out there. Would it happen? And okay, he played in the, he started the final, but I would be spitting tax if I was Manchester United, because it's not helped them. And I tell you what, I don't think anyone was completely surprised he came back. Look, let's just hope it's a sort of tiny little thing that he's picked up as an injury, but it didn't help, and it caused you a lot of problems in the Community Shield, because Lisandro Martinez went there, and then when he got moved into the middle because Maguire went off, Pellistri went at right back, Diogo Dalot, who can play either side, went over to left back, and Pellistri gets done. Well, Doku has a run at him, Savinho has a run at him, and then Bernardo Silva, probably the shortest player on the pitch, and probably the shortest player in northwest London, actually, does Pellistri in the head. So all those things are sort of tied in with sort of Luke Shaw's unavailability. So look, Ten Hag has made mistakes, but on the injury front, I have absolute total sympathy and support for Ten Hag, and it'd be fascinating his first press conference, and what if he actually opens up on Luke Shaw and whether England handled him properly.
Yeah, it is incredibly frustrating, isn't it? Like, obviously, it was clear that Luke Shaw must be rushing himself back for full fitness, because typically a player doesn't go from playing some minutes one game to, what was the final was less than a week after the semi-final, wasn't it, or thereabouts. So already you're going from not being able to start a game to starting a huge game like the Euros final. He clearly couldn't have been fully fit for that game, and then now we see, like we said, a month later, and it seems as though he's not available. It is very frustrating. Conversely then, Kobbie Mainoo, someone who it seemed like was sort of success after success after success for him in his career so far, playing his first starts, I think, in November last year, and then starting the Euros final as one of England's most consistent players in the competition, 7 months later, 8 months later. What do you make of Kobbie Mainoo as a player, and just as a phenomenon as much as anything?
So we got to watch the first 20 minutes or so of training when the players do the boxes, the rondos, and you always know the young players who are rated, because you see the senior players absolutely pinging a ball, as Keane did with Rio Ferdinand and in that era. And they were pinging a ball at Kobbie Mainoo, and he was just controlling it and laying it off, whether it was one touch, whether it was two touch. He was just totally at home. And you could just see the players, the senior players, responding. Well, we've seen this kid on the pitch. We played against him. We didn't know much about him a year ago, but yeah, he belongs. He absolutely belongs. And he will start. He played well alongside Declan Rice. I thought he actually played better than Declan Rice. What he's got is what you really want from the Manchester United academy kids, and the best ones have had it down the years. And I would definitely say he's got the ability to be one of your best graduates. He's just got that fearlessness. He'll take the ball under pressure because he believes in his technique, and he's also got that futsal element. I know he played for Manchester Futsal because we had a chat with him about it, because I didn't know he had that futsal background. He talked about it, and futsal, I mean, it's obviously everyone focuses on a technical game, and you look at the Brazilian Ronaldo, and he played it, and the way he finished was often a futsal finish. But also with Kobbie Mainoo, he was making the point that it's as much about decision making, decisiveness, almost that chess-like element of planning ahead. And you can just see that with him. You can just see that he is constantly just scanning, so he knows where everyone is, so he knows what he's going to do 2-3 moves ahead before the ball comes into him. So yeah, I just thought defensively, attacking wise, I just thought he brought so much to England's midfield. Off the pitch as well, you talk to any of the players out there, they all go, what a lovely kid. Just a huge credit to his family, to Manchester United academy and club, and to him himself. He is, I mean, you say he's a phenomenon, but he won't look at himself like that. He'll just want to be Kobbie Mainoo, playing with his friends, doing well for his club, doing well for his country. And I think that's absolutely key, because the best players do have that humility.
Brilliant. Yeah, I just hope we can sort of have a squad around him that doesn't require him to play 55 games from start to finish next season, and we can play him and build him in the right way. But I'm almost too excited to talk about him, because I feel like if I say anything, it'll jinx it, or he won't become the player that I feel like he could be, because he's been so good like you said, he could become one of the, the best academy products we've had. And it's just, almost nerve-wracking to watch him play, because I think he could do anything, and anything less than that would be disappointing. But it's just been so brilliant to see him come through so far. Moving on a little bit then towards the ownership, which has obviously been massive. It's been, it's sort of dominated the headlines. It's dominated how United have been run over the last 6 or 7 months. What first seemed like a small stake that would have a little bit of footballing control now seems as though Ineos are basically running the show at Manchester United. What do you make of what you've seen from them so far? And do you think, from what you know of Dan Ashworth and Dave Brailsford and Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada, do you think that the pieces are there for Manchester United to have proper success going forward now?
I saw Jason Wilcox take a coaching session once. I was there, I was interviewing someone else, and it was really interesting. Jason Wilcox, he was dealing with, I think it was under 11s, under 12s. His attention to detail, his man management, which obviously you need even more with kids, just thought was absolutely outstanding. I know that's not necessarily his role, but you could see, obviously I covered his career as a winger at Blackburn Rovers, the title team, and what a good player he was. So maybe you've got many of the good strands that you need in terms of someone who can coach, who could play, and now stepping up into that role. Dan Ashworth as well, I'm a huge admirer of his attention to detail, his hunger, his enthusiasm for getting things done, his experience. I sat down with him once, and we were just talking about the sort of the young English players coming through, and this was about 10 years ago when there was a debate about whether there was English talent. He knew everything. He knew the sort of the nationalities of the potential kids coming through in Charlton's academy, at Palace's academy, the fact that the Nigerian FA might be chasing them, the fact that the other countries might be chasing them as well. And you look at it, and I think about a half to 2/3 of the England age group at the moment are eligible for other countries, and he was absolutely on top of that. That's just one sort of window into how sort of well prepared he is, and he would know all the young players in Europe. So in terms of that scouting mentality, he's got that. He's a good people's person. He gets on with people, which is so important. He's decisive. So look, I don't know Barada, but you've got good people. You've got good people in there, but you've got to sort your recruitment out, because what I don't understand. Oh, look, so just one thing on Ineos. I would respect and like Ineos even more if they just got rid of the Glazers, and if you actually had that break. Because at the moment, the Glazers are going, we're on the commercial side, making absolute fortunes, and they're getting wealthier and wealthier. And Ineos are on the football side, which is good, because you'd rather have Ineos on the football side. You wouldn't want Glazers anywhere near that. But just, I will warm completely to the Ineos and to Jim Ratcliffe when the Glazers have gone, because I still think you're tainted by association when you've still got them there, because they're not into football, they're into money. I think Ineos, obviously they're into money, but they're also into developing teams. They are sports fans. Brailsford clearly, Ratcliffe clearly. So I think I quite like their energy and their approach. If they could just get rid of the Glazers, obviously that's a financial thing and it's a time thing. But one thing I don't understand at the moment is the direction of travel in recruitment, because I thought the idea was they were going to come in and recruit players, and it was going to be, whether it's data driven, whether it was more scouting driven, and less driven by the manager, or the whole thing was a more collaborative thing. But it seems like it's like the Blues Brothers who are putting the band back together. It's like the old Ajax team are sort of coming back together, particularly with the two new signings, Mazraoui and De Ligt. Good players, particularly the fullback. I think he'll be an absolute gem for you. So I don't have much of an issue, particularly with him. And obviously you need defensive reinforcements. The weekend showed that, and losing Varane as well, and Maguire not being the player he was. Johnny Evans is just brilliant, but you can't rely on someone who's in their mid-30s. He's a fantastic leader, a great coach, and a great sort of club ambassador. And actually, I thought he did pretty well against Haaland at the weekend. But he's not the future. But I just think, well, hang on a sec, you're still going back to old Ajax players. So, that's something that the club have got to balance out. And maybe it shows that Ten Hag is slightly stronger than people give him credit for.
Yeah, it is a bit of an odd one, that, isn't it? Because there was all these reports that Ten Hag is unhappy that he's losing some power and that he won't have say on X, Y, and Z. And then, Joshua Zirkzee, the Dutch player who presumably Ten Hag has very good knowledge of. De Ligt and Mazraoui literally used to play under Ten Hag. It doesn't seem as though the transfer policy has changed radically since Ineos came in. I suppose the one thing you might say is that the fees we've paid for them have been slightly more reasonable. It's been 40s, 30s, 50s, 20s, and it was 60 million euros for Yoro, but it's not none of this 60, 70, 80 million that we saw for Højlund or Anthony or Casemiro. Potentially there's a bit of a difference there, but personnel-wise, it's felt very similar to the last couple of seasons, hasn't it? I mean, if we look at a bit more on sort of Ineos and generally their plan, we look at the rumours and I say it's rumours for the 100,000 seater stadium. I think that the seating number is a rumour, but they definitely want to build a new stadium or redevelop Old Trafford. Reports of turning Old Trafford into a slightly smaller 30,000 seater stadium for the women and the academy teams to use. We've seen Carrington already is undergoing huge reworks for to try and build that up to a state-of-the-art facility. Do you get the feeling that Ineos, not just on the pitch but off the pitch, want United to be, not just the biggest and most supported club in England, but the sort of most impressive club in England? Do you get that feeling from them?
Totally. It's down to one word: performance. And whether they've been involved in cycling, whatever they've been involved in, they've absolutely wanted, the pursuit of excellence, the marginal gains. Brailsford is very much associated with that. I mean, I don't know how much Jim Ratcliffe's worth, but I mean, I imagine it's north of 10 billion. I've not got a clue, but you don't do that without having that pursuit of perfection, that pursuit of excellence. They will absolutely expect that from the players. I went to see Kasper Schmeichel when he was over at Nice when they owned them, and he said it was quite interesting talking to the Ineos people, and he said they opened his eyes, and he'd been in football 20 odd years and obviously embedded in the game because of his dad, and he was saying that sort of Brailsford, he was just talking about things which Kasper was going, wow, that's amazing, maybe I'll go and do that, and just thinking outside the box, that horrible phrase. So absolutely, their background in sport, their background in excellence and achieving performance, it's all about performance. And Manchester United, since Sir Alex left in 2013, you've been defined by underperformance. You overpay, you've got good players, but they're underachieving. And that Ineos is the reverse of that. They absolutely want perfection and performance.
Do you think United need a new stadium, or would you be in favour of potentially revamping Old Trafford? How important is the place where United play their games being, one of the best facilities in the world?
Joe, you're Manchester United. You should have the best training ground. Your training ground, and I've been to most of them in the Premier League, all of them in the Premier League. Carrington's had a lick of pain. It has actually. One of the things that Cristiano Ronaldo did when he was leaving the building, he did make some very pertinent points about the training ground and the poorer facilities there. And that, when I went to see Ten Hag a couple of years ago, he actually sort of pointed out, sort of fairly proudly, what had been done. But I mean, it seemed to be mainly in the canteen area. They'd open up the canteen area and change the sort of table configuration, so players would be sitting around more in a circle rather than at tables and just only being able to talk to one or two, which, to be honest, is just the most basic thing that anyone going into a training ground would do. So, but it's interesting. There were some reports recently, I think in the Athletic or the Telegraph, talking about how the Ineos staff and United staff have been going to Tottenham's training ground, have been going to other training grounds. And obviously you were on the pre-season tour, and they were going and looking at these amazing stadiums, the SoFi Stadium and places like that. But I mean, look, Old Trafford has got this amazing name. The important thing is that you're not moving away from the location, which I think is really important. You'll keep the name. I think a 30,000 stadium, a slimmed down Old Trafford. And obviously, you have to be incredibly respectful for the Munich tunnel, whether that stays or whether that's incorporated in a new design. But what you need is a £2 billion, 100,000 seater Wembley of the North. And I know some people bridle at the Wembley of the North because Wembley's actually not, I know you go there a lot, but it's not actually a great stadium for atmosphere, but it is quite striking. You do want an iconic, get one of the world's best architects, have a short list of 4 or 5, a competition. And my dad was an architect, and he helped design Candlestick Park, which was the San Francisco stadium for baseball and American football. And so I've always sort of looked at stadiums, just from an architectural line. And Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, within a year, had won an award, and everyone made a joke. Tottenham won the award, but they got the RIBA gold medal, which is the Ballon d'Or of architectural achievements. And look, obviously, it all comes down to the players and the manager, and the most important thing are the supporters. But having a proper setting, a home fit for heroes, a place that doesn't leak. I mean, was it Dortmund, and the roof leaked there, and everyone go, oh, it's the German Old Trafford, and that's quite funny, and it went viral. But actually, that's embarrassing to Manchester United, a club of your stature. You've had enough trouble shoring up the leaks from the dressing room to the media. You can't have it in the roof. So look, a club of your stature, and a business, an enterprise of Ineos's ambition, you need that new stadium.
Yeah. I think the more that time goes on and the more we hear about, like you said, the location staying the same, Old Trafford not being sort of bulldozed and turned into, a Nando's or whatever, it does feel more like something I would be open to. I think a new mega stadium that is the best in the world, let alone, Manchester or England, would be something that I think we can all look at and go, Manchester United are doing things the right way again. We mentioned the transfers a little bit, and you're sort of surprised at maybe some of the names on the list. United have signed two centre-backs, a full-back, and an attacker. Do you see any other areas where United need to strengthen? That central midfield area has been one where we seem a little bit thin. Casemiro, I mean, is it all over the pitch, or where do you think United still need to strengthen?
Well, I think you need to get some out.
Yeah.
I mean, I just look at some of the players. I'm pleased to see Mason Mount playing well again, because there's a good player in there. I know his first season was benighted by injuries, but he will prove a good player. He can play wide, but also he can play as an 8. So you've got options there. Bruno Fernandes staying. I think has he got a new contract? I think that's really important. So it's not simply about the new players. It's those you hold on to and those you get, have to leave the club. I mean, Victor Lindelof, hard working, but he's not elite level. Why is he there? Anthony, I mean, he's one-footed. There's a good player in there. I know he's young. I know he's had his issues off the pitch as well. But, I mean, why is he on the payroll? And I imagine he's well paid as well. Jadon Sancho, he needs to go abroad. He needs to sort of go back abroad and sort of rebuild out there. So, it's... And also, you have to. I mean, PSR is less of an issue for Manchester United because you are a money-making machine. So I get that, but still, for the coach, he doesn't want to have sort of unhappy players wandering around. He doesn't want to have to sort of direct them towards the bomb squad. So absolutely, with the players that you're talking about, actually, I think the defence was the most important thing that they did address. I mean, it's really unfortunate that Rasmus Højlund got injured at the start of the season, and Lenny Yoro as well, because he looks like he's got, he will risk possession when he comes back fit, and it was unfortunate he got that metatarsal. But you do find players when they're coming to the league, particularly the Premier League. I know it's pre-season, but there is an intensity there and relentlessness of games, and you can't ease up in any games, particularly if you're Manchester United, when every team, you've got a target on your back because everyone wants to beat Manchester United, because even though you've had a relatively poor 11 years since Sir Alex left, you are still Manchester United. You're still the biggest name. You're still the biggest target. So, there is that pressure on players. Can they deal with it psychologically? So having Lisandro Martinez back, I know he got done for the goal, but by Oscar Bob at the weekend. But he is so important to have back. And him alongside Dillet as well. That will be a good blend. I assume Dalot would go to left back with Mazraoui, who's absolutely. I mean, I'm slightly surprised he's lost his way a bit at Bayern, because I know they've got other players who can play in there, but I just think he's an attacking player. He's. I mean, Wan-Bissaka was brilliant one-on-one. With that marking of individual players, very good defensively, but the modern fullback has to attack, and Mazraoui can do that.
Brilliant. Looking forward to that. Just finally then, Ten Hag, who, if we'd have had this chat maybe 6 weeks ago, it would probably have been all about the manager and his future and what he has to prove and why it was so bad last season. And now it feels as though, I would say, from good PR from Manchester United and, you know, sort of the way they've handled it, he's almost an afterthought. This whole sort of Ten Hag out brigade seemed to have gone very quiet indeed. But what do you think he needs to do this season? Because whilst we go into the season, it seems pretty much a fresh slate for him. You know, if he has a bad month or, you know, a bad sort of 3 or 4 games, all of that will come back, and all of that sort of murmur and talking about him leaving will come back. What do you think he needs to do this season to be successful?
I mean, you know, he's Dutch. They're all incredibly honest. I mean, almost brutally honest. And I want him to be honest honest is probably not the right word, but just more upfront and more transparent in press conferences. And, you know, if Manchester United haven't played well, just absolutely be honest. You don't have to throw the players under the bus, but actually, you know, just say, listen, you know, we are going to address it. More confidence, you know, I find some of his press conferences, because he is a very likable individual. And I'll tell you what, okay, there's very little ego to him. He's not from, I mean, you can't sort of stereotype a country too much, but he's not from Amsterdam. He's not sort of, you know, from that sort of glitzy world in terms of grow up. He grew up in the country. He's just, you know, he's a very sensible individual, incredibly hard worker. You know, he gets that work ethic from his dad, whose business, I think, went under, and, you know, he built it back up. So Eric would have seen that, how his father, rather than fold himself, just fought back. And there is that quiet substance and strength to him. You know, one of the first in the training ground, one of the last to leave. His work ethic is outstanding. And I think anyone, you know, Manchester United fans, and your fans have been brilliant in the stadium, and match-going fans in the stadium are completely different from fans and the whole mood on social media. I think there should be a big stamp on the front of X or Twitter by saying this does not necessarily reflect match-going fans, what gets said on social media. Because I think your fans in the stadium, because it's that old Ferguson thing, you back the manager. And I think you've been brilliant with Ten Hag. And I think maybe he needs to repay you by making sure that defence isn't so easily run through, by attacking more. But you know what? If he's got the players fit, I think you've got a side that can push for that 4th Champions League position, definitely.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we saw it a couple of years ago, didn't we? When the momentum is in the right direction, United can, you know, get a few points and beat most of the big sides. We've just got to get it together, and hopefully with a bit of momentum we've got from Ineos, a bit of confidence from off the pitch, that can give us at least a start in the season that can, you know, hopefully build toward big things. But thank you very much, Henry, for joining us. Thank you for coming on. Always good to chat to you. Very nice to speak to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. My pleasure, Joe. Take care.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much for joining us at home. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This has been a one-on-one interview with Henry Winter. The links are in the description to everywhere you can find Henry, so click those and check those out. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a bit.